will pay a visit to Kenosha, Wisconsin tomorrow. The governor worries the trip will further fuel tensions in the city. A White House spokesman says President Trump will be meeting with law enforcement and surveying damage done during protests that turned destructive. Yesterday, some police supporters gathered in downtown Kenosha, where protesters have demonstrated against police brutality since the shooting of Jacob Blake. Some attending the rally wore back the blue shirts. Others carried American flags. In St. Louis, a 29-year-old police officer shot in the line of duty over the weekend has died. Officer Tamaris Bohannon was searching for a shooting victim when a gunman shot him in the head. A second officer was shot as well. Police took the suspect into custody after a 12-hour standoff. Officers held a procession for the fallen officer late last night. Also making headlines this morning, residents in the South who were hit by Hurricane Laura last week are still reeling from her effects days later. The biggest issue looming in the background is the impact that the COVID-19 pandemic could play and whether or not a rise in cases will result as residents struggle to get back on their feet. As CBS's Laura Podesta reports, this comes as many areas were already heavily impacted by the virus.
In terms of wind speed, Laura was the strongest hurricane to hit Louisiana since the mid-1800s. Now, as residents clean up, the state, a COVID hotspot, is struggling with a backlog of cases.
And when you put them both together, it's extremely challenging.
Speaking on Face the Nation Sunday, Acting Homeland Security Secretary Chad Wolf said FEMA was prepared for this combination of natural disasters and is doing everything it can to minimize contact between evacuees.
What you're seeing today is we've got about 16,000 folks in non-congregate shelters. Those are mainly hotels, and less than 1,000 in the big congregate shelters or the gymnasiums that you would normally see.
Over the weekend, President Trump toured some of the damage. The storm made roads impassable and ripped roofs off buildings, leaving some people scrambling to put up tarps as scattered showers moved in. Others had nothing to even put tarps on, as many homes were completely wiped out. Thousands remain without power in Louisiana. Governor Edwards signed an order extending the statewide mask mandate and phase 2, including closing bars to on-site consumption for another 2 weeks. Laura Podesta, CBS News.
At least 18 deaths are blamed on the storm, from falling trees to drowning to carbon monoxide poisoning. Turning now to the latest in COVID-19 news, the number of confirmed coronavirus cases has topped 25 million worldwide so far during the pandemic. The U.S. is closing in around the 6 million mark amid indications new cases and deaths are generally falling, but cases are rising in the Upper Plains and the Midwest. Here in Montana, Bighorn County added another 7 cases to the 93 announced by the state. 131 people are in Montana hospitals with the virus, which is a record high during the pandemic. The state crossed the 100 death mark on Friday, and we now stand at 105. More than 1,900 people currently have the virus in Montana. A California girl is on the mend after nearly losing her life to a condition linked to COVID-19 in children. The rare inflammatory syndrome has sickened hundreds of children across the country. And as CBS's Chris Martinez tells us, doctors say parents need to know the warning signs.
Rosa Vasquez cherishes every moment with her daughter after nearly losing her.
For sure, I knew she was going to die. That's how I felt.
9-year-old Zitlali fell ill in May with an unrelenting high fever. She ended up in the pediatric ICU at Children's Hospital Los Angeles, and her condition worsened.
There was a time that she wouldn't open her eyes anymore. Her eyes were as red as a tomato.
Antibody testing showed Zitlali had been exposed to COVID-19. Doctors determined she was suffering from multisystem inflammatory syndrome in children, or MIS-C, a rare but serious condition associated with coronavirus that causes body parts and organs to become inflamed.
She couldn't breathe, and there was a time that everybody came running because her heart had stopped.
The CDC has reported 570 cases of MIS-C and 10 deaths nationwide since the pandemic started. Most children develop the condition 2 to 4 weeks after a COVID-19 infection.
We are still learning continually and every day more and more about this virus. especially how it may affect our children.
Dr. Jackie Shmushkovich says parents need to be aware of the warning signs, which include high fever, rash, red eyes, lips and tongue, and stomach pains.
No one knows your child better than you do. If you feel your child looks very ill and has a high fever, I really strongly encourage you to reach out to your pediatrician.
It was pretty scary.
Now back home, Zitlali has this message for the doctors and nurses who helped her.
Thank you very much, because without them, I might have not survived.
She hopes other families take precautions to keep safe from the virus. Chris Martinez, CBS News, Los Angeles.
The Montana Department of Health and Human Services confirmed the state's first known case of multisystem inflammatory syndrome in a Teton County child. The patient is between the ages of 10 and 19 and received treatment at a children's hospital in Salt Lake City. That patient has since been released and is back in Montana recovering from the illness. Back here in Billings, a man was able to escape his Midtown home after it went up in flames. Firefighters responded to 431 Lewis Avenue on Sunday afternoon to find the fire raging near the backside of the house. Officials estimate there was at least $200,000 in damage to both the house and a backyard shed. The cause of the fire is currently under investigation. Onto the campaign trail, the two candidates in the race to become Montana's next superintendent of public instruction faced off in their first debate of the 2020 season. Incumbent Republican Elsie Arntzen is in a rematch against Democrat challenger Melissa Romano, who she defeated in 2016. Arntzen said her experience and relationship with members of the state legislature will help get school funding laws passed. But Romano argues her opponent hasn't been forceful enough in support of public schools. However, the candidates agree supporting students from a young age is vital.
I know how important it is to reach and intervene early in a child's life, and public preschool it's absolutely time that we invest in public preschool and our young learners. We know that it will benefit long beyond when they're 5 and 6, well into when they're adults.
This begins in middle school. You know, we can add a brand new cohort of students, but those other children are left behind. And let's invest, not only invest in our children, but let's have a more robust conversation with our private partners.
And you can watch the full debate on KTVQ.com. Also making headlines this morning, today is a historic day in the Middle East as a commercial flight took off from Israel with its final destination in the United Arab Emirates. White House advisor Jared Kushner and U.S. National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien are expected to join a senior Israeli delegation on the flight. The UAE is just the third Arab country to establish full diplomatic relations with Israel and the first to do so in more than 25 years. The flight is expected to be allowed to cross Saudi airspace, normally blocked to Israeli air traffic. And before we take a break, a University of Wyoming grad and Chief Master Sergeant in the U.S. Air Force is helping put a new spin on the 1984 hit God Bless the USA. Sergeant Ryan Carson is the leader of the Air Force's Singing Sergeants. Servicemen and women in the group were recruited by Lee Greenwood to sing the track with him in a new recording. Carson says it was a big privilege to get to sing the song with its original performer and a fun way to showcase civic pride.
You know, it's not about us. We're not rock stars, we're airmen. I take that with a big sense of pride that when I'm on a video, I'm not representing me, I'm not showcasing me, I'm showcasing the United States Air Force. It's kind of a humbling opportunity.
The version of the song is being considered for a Country Music Award nomination for Musical Event of the Year.